Pass the principle, please. I want to read you something that's actually from the scriptures. In it, it says, in the first month, on the 14th day of the month, at dusk, is the Lord's Passover. And on the 15th day of the same month, in the feast of unleavened bread unto the Lord, 7 days ye shall eat unleavened bread. In the first day ye shall have a holy convocation, ye shall do no manner of servile work, and ye shall bring an offering made by fire unto the Lord 7 days. In the seventh day is a holy convocation, and ye shall do no manner of servile work. That is from Leviticus chapter 23, verse 5 through 8. So spring has sprung, like I said last week. This week is holy days. This month has many holy days. They're very abundant in April. And of course, this week is Holy Week for those in the, especially in the Catholic tradition, as well as in the Christian condition. And our daytimes are getting longer. Have you noticed that? The daylight gets a little longer. And though it feels we have lost some freedoms, it's actually a perfect time to get free. Free from old patterns, from old beliefs and ideas that came out in the poem, that came out in the couple of bits from Louise Hay that I read. It is a time to dig in. Some of us, not all of us, I understand, but some of us have a little more free time than we usually do. And I understand that you spend that watching a little more of that thing behind me or other things, but it's also a time to dig into our old patterns and beliefs and our limited thoughts and work on those. And not just as an individual, but as a people, to check on that as a people. This biblical command that I just read from Leviticus is talking about what's happening Wednesday. Wednesday starts Passover, or Pesach, as the rabbi would say, which commemorates the liberation, the emancipation, and the communal responsibility for oneself in the world based on the story of the Passover. So I want to begin by telling you the story of the Passover as I interpret it, as I read it, as I see it. So here we go. The story of Passover. There once was an orphan, husband, father of two, shepherd, defector, murderer, and possible stutterer. We're not sure about exactly what his speech impediment might have been. And our hero for this story, Moses. Now, one day, Moses was shepherding his flock of sheep in the desert when suddenly he came upon this bush on fire. A burning bush, you might say. In fact, it was a talking burning bush, and it made you take your shoes off while on its property. You ever have that? Do you have a friend who has you take their shoes off, your shoes off when you enter their house? A lot of them have white carpeting or something like that. Well, evidently the burning bush felt the same way. Take your shoes off when you're in my area. And then it told Moses, look, I see what's happening to the people, the Hebrews. I hear their cries, I don't like it, and I need you to fix it. So go tell the Pharaoh, let my people go. Well, Moses was like, now hold on. See, Moses was freaking out a little bit. This was a task definitely out of his comfort zone. You ever had a task you had to do or wanted to do when you step into something new that's a little out of your comfort zone? So he looks at the burning bush and he says, nobody's going to believe me. Who can I send? Who could I say sent me to insist on such a thing? This is a big thing. You got to help me here. And the scorching shrub told him in a very godlike voice, tell them, Aye, Asher Aye, I am that I am sent you. Go speak your word, Moses, and free your people. I am within you to support you with the power you need. Very impressive speech by the blazing bush, especially with the dramatic echo that I'm sure that was going on there. But nonetheless, our hero was still a bit weary about his task, not believing that the universe, speaking through the burning bush here, had his back. Who hasn't felt that at times? Huh? Have you felt that? When you step into a task that's a little scary and you're so into the fear of it, the scariness of it that you don't even remember that the universe always has your back. So, and if you stood, heck, if you stood in front of some conflagrant, conversant chaparral, would you believe such a thing? Would you believe if you were standing in front of this burning bush, this conflagrant, conversant chaparral, as I wrote? Boy, that's silly. Would you believe such a thing? Think about that. Well, Moses answered, are you out of your mind? Pharaoh's going to have a conniption. He's not going to care that I am that I am sent me to tell him to let my people go. Come on now. And the bush replied, you come on now, Dodo Ed. Step it up a bit. At least act as if, Mose. Then the infinite being showed Moses that he, Moses, had a few talents that he previously didn't know about that would prove that he could represent the divine that was within him. It was that old stick and serpent trick that you read about later and that comes up later in the story. It's very impressive. It's great with the ladies, and some people are good singers, some people with numbers, but Moses has a stick and a snake. That's his big talent. And don't laugh, the universe is unlimited. Maybe that could be one of your things soon. Well, anyway, still not convinced. Our little 80-year-old rascal, and yes, Moses was 80 years old when all this happened. Think about that. Brought up another one of his limiting beliefs, surely he thought, a detriment to this whole affair. Hey, Lord, what about my uncircumcised lips? I know, kind of a weird phrase, but hey, that's what it says in the Bible. So he had some sort of, like most people know, not in the movie for sure, a speech impediment. As well, he was very socially awkward. He was used to hanging out with sheep all the time. But he said, replied Moses, I'm good with sheep, but people, my brother Aaron, he's the charismatic one here. Look, said the heated hedge, have a little faith, dude. I'm giving you this job because of those things. If I sent some big, handsome guy with booming Centaurian tones, say Charlton Heston, everyone would believe for a minute or two, but it's too showy. They need to be wowed by my energy manifest through a regular guy. They need to see the vibration of my luminescence in action that is within you, to learn that it is within them. The Hebrews just don't get that yet. They will believe it more if you show them. And remember, I'll be there. You just call out my name. 'Cause Mose, you got a friend in me. Still, Moses wasn't convinced. Have you ever had that? In retrospect, can you see signs from the universe showing you the next step and you didn't grasp hold of it? You didn't even listen? We don't have time to list mine. Anyway, Moses told the bush that he wanted to have his people free, but wasn't feeling this power within him quite yet. So the universe, in its flaming cause and effect splendor, says, geez, okay, if you really want to do it the hard way, fine, whatever. But you have to go down, Moses, way down in Egypt land, and tell, O Pharaoh, let my people go. You will get the Hebrews freed, the Lord said. I promise. But if you're so set on it being difficult, then okay. Okay. The law hears you. The law manifests what you desire. So this is what's going to happen. I'm going to harden Pharaoh's heart and make it more difficult for you. What? Cried Moses. Hey, pal, you ask, you get, my friend. Happy now? The lesson here is if you think life is going to be difficult, the universe is happy to oblige. And they certainly obliged Moses in his quest here. So anyway, Moshe, which is his Hebrew name, Moshe, returns to Egypt. And he's starting to feel pretty good now. He goes to the Pharaoh, and he has full divine strength surging through him, and he's feeling it now. He's feeling it, and he goes up to the Pharaoh, and he demands, let my people go. And the Pharaoh looks at him and says, nah, I don't think so. And this goes on for days. Days and days and days. Moses keeps going back. He keeps getting an audience from Pharaoh. He keeps saying, let my people go. And then Pharaoh goes, nah, I don't think so. The serpent and stick trick didn't impress him. Pharaoh was like, big deal, seen it before. The I am that I am stuff that the burning bush told him to tell the Pharaoh who sent him, that didn't impress him either. Even the Let My People Go song that he tried to sing for the Pharaoh didn't work. Thus, Moses brought in the 10 plagues. He did have that power. He did feel this power. And so he brought into the 10 plagues. Now, each plague means something. And we continue having some of those plagues our own. Modern thinkers of those 10 plagues that were described in the Bible talk about how that relates to now. Wars are kind of those plagues that we put ourselves through. This COVID-19 thing, as I spoke about a month ago, and as I read some people over the last week were starting to say a similar thing that I said a month ago, that all this stuff might be showing up because we as a race, we as human beings, a gathering of human beings throughout the world, are wanting something to bring us together, to bring peace, to change the world. Maybe sometimes it takes something drastic. But most important to this story is that the Hebrews were in bondage, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. They were accepting their strife as their truth, not just their fact, thus making it harder for them, or any of us in a similar limited belief at home, to get out of there. Race consciousness can be a tough vortex to transcend if you buy into it. Well, the Hebrews didn't understand that they were the true power. They didn't get that. They gave up their true power, the true power of their lives, and they gave it over. They gave it over, and they didn't know that it wasn't Ramses the Second or Thutmose the Third, depending on the history you read of who the Pharaoh might have been at that time, Yul Brynner. It wasn't the Pharaoh. but they believed that the Pharaoh was God to them. Well, finally, the Israelites fled. So 2.2 plus million people fled with Moses, and they'd been in bondage for over 200 years. And doesn't our limiting beliefs sometimes feel like they've been around for 200 years? And they all come this way. They go over like 1,000 kilometers from Egypt to the Red Sea. They left the misery, they left the oppression, and they finally get on their path to the promised land, and they suddenly hit that wall. Now, this wall happened to be the Red Sea. Now, we all have our walls that we hit. We all have our limiting beliefs that even when we jump into something new, even when we jump over, bust through this new task that we feel is a little difficult, sometimes we hit a wall of some sort. And the Israelites, even after 1,000 kilometers or more, bumped into the Red Sea. So scouts were saying that the Pharaoh and his army, which you could say their past, was on their tails. They were following them on horses. And so what do the Hebrews do then? They start pleading. They start doing that pleading prayer stuff, for help again. They step into that, please help me again, I'll do anything kind of stuff. They whine and bitch and moan and cry about the obstacle, the setback, and they're all in this woe is me stuff. Then, of course, boom, that manifests into their lives. What was me? Here it is. What was me? Here's the Red Sea stopping me, and here's the Egyptians and the army coming at us, and now we're stuck again. We're here again. We're trapped again, and all their faith has gone into the toilet, if they had toilets then, which they didn't. But Moses is a spiritual guy. He's a Christ consciousness activist kind of guy. And he knows in every cell of his body that even on this special occasion, principle works. He may not have used those words, but that's what was happening. He evolved by involving himself in the spirit within, reaching within to this power of divine intelligence that he began to accept and reveal in his life, the I am that I am. And he spoke his word, and the Red Sea parted. And they crossed, and it took them 6 hours to cross. And then the Red Sea, by command, by the declaration of Moses, unparted and came back together, leaving behind drowned, dead, buried, not only the Egyptian army, or most of the Egyptian army, but a huge chunk of their limiting beliefs. Now they really saw some power. Now they may have called it a miracle, they may have called it magic, some of them, but it shocked them, and they were like, "Whoa, wait a minute, what's going on?" Now, unfortunately, it didn't really set in. They started replacing it with praising Moses instead of knowing that they had that power within themselves too. I think the Buddha ran into this, and Yeshua, Jesus, ran into this, of course, where people, instead of understanding, because all of them said that the power was within in one way or another, they weren't accepting that. They were still seeing the power outside of themselves. And it took them, the Israelites, the Hebrews, another 40 years until they even got that. Not that they all necessarily used that power to their greater good, to their magnificence. That was already there, but at least they were intellectually aware. Rabbi Hanok of Alexander, he was a Hasidic master, he said, the real exile of Israel in Egypt was that they learned to endure it. It was easier to take the Jews out of Egypt than to take Egypt out of the Jews. Sound familiar? You know, we all move away from negative situations. We all move away from negative ideas, negative thoughts, limiting thoughts and ideas in our lives. And then many times something shows up and we recreate those limited ideas again. Get scared, whatever. We start to not believe ourselves anymore and we use whatever showed up as evidence that it doesn't work. Well, actually, it's evidence that it did work because you hadn't cleared those limiting beliefs yet. You may have thought you had, but you didn't believe you had. You didn't fill it with the feelings behind it, knowing what it felt like to be in the situation, in the belief of your magnificence, whatever that limiting belief was. See, there's a deeper dynamic going on, and we have to dig deep to get to it and remove it, or to, like I said last week, to drown it with the good, with the positive, with the optimal. Our outer circumstances might have changed, but our inner landscape hasn't. And so we have to change our inner landscape in order for the outer situation to change. Principle is not bound by precedent is a big thing that Ernest Holmes and others have expounded for years and years and years, and it's still happening because whatever happened before, whatever is in your supposed biography, is not in your new biography, and you make a new biography every day. Sometimes in some parts of our lives we don't get it, just like the Hebrews. We hold habits of being enslaved, even when we're free. Even when we feel we're not as free, like in this stay-at-home situation for those that are doing that. Principle is always present to use. Principle is always present to use. I want to read you an example of how this is written by Estelle Frankel. Estelle Frankel is a Berkeley psychotherapist and a Jewish mysticism educator. And she wrote, if I take the time to just sit down, close my eyes, say a prayer, open myself to spirit, then my identity begins to expand and I remember that I'm not just Estelle, the personality, that I'm a soul, that I am an embodiment of the divine, and I move from what Jewish mystic says is a small mind to a big mind. And may I add, the Buddha spoke this as well, and many others might have as well. And in that other state, she continues, the bonds of the self, the small identity that limits us and dictates who we think we are, it frees up. It frees us up. It's sort of like a zooming out that you would do with a camera, but it's zooming out all the way to infinity, all the way to eternity, beyond time, beyond space. And in that moment of deep meditation or prayer, anything becomes possible because you are rising above the workings of time. That whole zooming out idea is very prevalent in an NLP exercise that if any of you have studied NLP or versions of that, neuro-linguistic programming, there is an exercise of when you want to get away from a trauma that is stuck in your mind, stuck in your amygdala. You see it as a movie. And then you zoom that movie out so it gets further and further and further and further away. So that it's not so much here in your face, attacking you all the time, coming at you, triggering you all the time. It is something far, far away, and it's just part of the cosmos, where we can grab from the infinity of the cosmos what we desire, what we want to have in our lives, not that thing that we have pushed away and away. There's a saying at the end of the Passover dinner, and again, happy Pesach on Wednesday. And for those having a Seder, blessings to you. I know you're having a Seder by Zoom, probably. But anyway, at the end of the Seder, the Passover dinner, there is a saying which is Lashana Haba'a bi Yerushalayim. Next year in Jerusalem. The idea being that next year we will all, as a people, be in Jerusalem. And the idea of that is next year we shall all be together as the Jewish people, free and at peace. Well, Yerushalayim, which usually is translated to Jerusalem, the word Jerusalem, actually means city of peace. So what we're saying at the end of the Seder, at the end of the Passover dinner, is that next year we all want to be in the city of peace within ourselves, as well as within the greater ourselves and the planet. We want to be in this unconditional love, the city of unconditional, universal, divine love. Knowing that the law is there, that the law is telling us, is informing us, is intuiting with us, and declaring with us, and exposing and experiencing with us in its demonstration for us, that thoughts become things, that feelings spark facts, that beliefs manifest biography. The Passover biography shows that we must be our own Moses, our own Redeemer, and redeem the truth in our lives. Not allow ourselves to become bitter or hold on to the past and hardening our heart like the Pharaoh did. And like it did with so many people who bought into the Pharaoh as God or as their God. Robert Browning wrote in Parcelcus. He wrote, "Truth is within ourselves. It takes no rise from outward things, whatever you may believe. There is an inmost center in us all, where truth abides in fullness, and around, wall upon wall, the gross flesh hems it in. This perfect, clear perception, which is truth, a baffling and perverting carnal mesh, binds it and makes all error, and to know rather consists in opening out a way, whence the imprisoned splendor may escape, than in effecting entry for a light, supposed to be without." Talking about the light within, coming out of us, being a part of us, and all this baffling and perverting carnal mesh that is in what we may call facts, what we may call reality, is one thing, is our perception of it. But when we consist in opening the way through our heart to the divine within us, then those facts tend to change because we relate to them differently. So I invite you to free yourself from limited consciousness. I invite you to enter into your land of milk and honey, to step into your promised land, your city of peace, to transcend to that I am that you are, to the vibration of beauty and peace and wisdom and power and light and life and love and joy. And I invite you to do that not next year, not even sometime this year, but right now, right here and right now. Thank you so much. Namaste, everyone.